Hi everyone. So for those that don't know me, my name's David Siddall and I am the UX and content manager at Waltham Forest. And we're going through a big kind of redevelopment of our council website, and we're moving from quite an old school web publishing model and trying to do a bit of digital transformation and move to a more democratized process. So when we were offered to play a part in the kind of the working group that was coming up, it was a bit of a no-brainer for us to get our requirements there. So this show and tell is kind of I've got a PowerPoint presentation that's kind of more for people to refer to later on and to get a feel for it that aren't here. But I'll kind of whiz through that, and then I've got a demo that basically shows in action how the things that have been built so far work. So yeah, I'll just start presenting my screen. Feel free to put your hand up or anything, just interrupt at any point. Okay, I'm not so good on Zoom, and a bit of a Teams, not a fanboy, but a Teams kind of guy at Waltham Forest. But anyway, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, essentially this is the show and tell for the lovely title Content Lifecycle Workstream of work. And like Will said at the start, this comes from the Content Lifecycle Working Group, whose main goal is to design and specify and oversee the implementation of a common content governance model in LocalGov Drupal. So this work is very much kind of lots of the bits have been done. There's a couple of bits that are almost done, but we just wanted to show off the main features, that kind of thing. So there's roles and permissions. So we've identified 3 main roles alongside a user manager role. There's a workflow that allows people to publish content, and also people that perhaps you don't want them to publish straight to live, that would go through a workflow, have their content reviewed. There's also an approvals dashboard that allows a view for your content designers or your central digital team to review things. There's a scheduling functionality, so there's 4 different parts of that. And this isn't part of the demo, but I think is being developed right now, is content reviews and quality assurance. So it's kind of a policy for content that maybe you want to review on a sporadic basis, and you can kind of have flexibility around that. So just diving into the roles and permissions, we've identified 3 of these. So there's the contributor, the author, and the editor, and it's pretty much from left to right. That's a kind of level in terms of access rights. So your contributor could potentially be your person from a service team, or someone that maybe isn't so digitally savvy, or you've trained up, but they need their content to be reviewed to make sure it meets house guidelines, that it's plain English, that it's all the good things that we want as councils to serve our residents. So they can write content, they cannot publish straight to live, they send their content to approval. An author is the next level up, so they've got elevated access rights, they can write content, they can publish the content that they write as well. They cannot publish content sent for approval, so if a contributor sent something to approval, they can't jump in and then edit that content. And they would be kind of your comms officer, your kind of comms person embedded within a service team, or just someone that's very digitally savvy that you trust as an editor. And then the final one, this is kind of more geared to your content designer, your central digital team person. So you can write, you can edit, you approve, you reject edits. You have access to the dashboard that I mentioned, and you're kind of the quality assurance on the end of the main workflow for that contributors put their content towards.
Just 2 things really quickly to say on that. So if you're a WordPress user, you'll recognize those names. And when we were doing this, it's probably one of the hardest things was to try and work out what these things are called. And we had a lot of sort of conversations around that. But these names and the permissions they have are broadly similar. So if you've got a WordPress site, you should be familiar with them. And I think probably, sorry for diving in, David. But the second thing is this is all our suggested. All of this you're going to see is all us suggesting. So it's not mandatory that you have to have it. We'll talk about that a bit later, just in case you're wondering.
Cool. And so the kind of benefits around this, so I've said it's a publishing model that can flex to suit your needs. So for example, if you were very much like you have a central model anyway already, you could have the majority of authors or that kind of thing. You also can peer review content, so it's not just contributors that would have their content reviewed. If an author wanted theirs reviewed as well, they could send it for review and get it done and that kind of thing. So it's kind of quality assurance and peer reviewing built in, and then it's also empowering editors and supporting digital transformation. So that's a big plus from our side, from moving to that central model to a more devolved model and upskilling services and understanding digital a lot more. So that's a kind of big driver from Waltham Forest side anyway. So just in terms of the workflow, this shows the content, well, it's a content publisher. So this includes both the author and the editor themes. And this shows that content can be made into a new draft. You can save as you go, and then you can publish it as you go and restore old drafts, archive, do those things. So that's people that have publishing rights. And then this somewhat more complicated one that you can't see very well is the kind of global workflow for a contributor that's starting a new page, sending it to review, those kind of things. It shows how a editor might reject the draft, and then it would be sent back to a draft to the contributor, and then if they're happy with it, it could go live in the future. So both these kind of they're not very PowerPoint friendly, but you can see them on the Miro board that we have for this work. So feel free to click this link in future. And then just in terms of an approvals dashboard, so this is the approvals dashboard that I'll jump into in just a few moments, but it basically shows content that is in the moderation state of review and sent for it. So as an editor, I would have access to this view, and on the operations on the right hand side, you can click edit, and then you can publish the thing sent for review just there. So that's something I'll show in just a short while. So I've kind of already talked through this. So rejected edits are preserved and sent back to the author to re-edit. And yeah, it's kind of it's a view that you can decide what to do with. We have had talk about how notifications and things like that should run in terms of whether it should be email, whether it should be done within Drupal, whether it could be done by other manners. But that's kind of not for the MVP for where we're at so far. And then scheduling. I've in the demo, I'll show you each of these, but essentially it uses a Drupal module called scheduled transitions, and you can schedule content to publish, schedule a new draft of content that's already live to publish, schedule and unpublish, and then schedule a reversion to a previous revision. So potentially if you've got different phases of a marketing campaign, that's the one that's probably the most accurate. And then content reviews and quality assurance. So this one I think is in progress, I think within the latest sprint, or it's being worked on as we speak. So this is another view available to editors, and it will show all content that needs to be reviewed. So for example, if Waltham Forest were to submit, have our default policy applied to every single page that we publish, that it needs to be reviewed after 12 months. Once pages go past that 12-month date, they would be given a status that shows that they've kind of expired. You also can apply these on a page-by-page basis. So a good example for that would be the different steps out of COVID. All your COVID pages, you could kind of schedule them for review a couple of days before the steps go live. Or you could even just schedule them beforehand if you knew what they were going to do as well. And then, yeah, that's pretty much that piece of work. So just in terms of, we've mentioned the working group who is involved in this, but so essentially the whole idea as I'm led to believe by Will and Finn, is that there needs to be common needs, common goals between councils. So we had 4 councils specifying their user needs toward this, and they pretty much, we have developed the common needs of those councils. Obviously, you can build on top of it, as Will said, and then it's been aptly supported by Agile collectives. So Maria, Stephen, Finn have all formed part of the working group as well. So yeah, it's been, I don't know, do you want to go into a bit more of that, Will, and kind of talk about it?
Only briefly, I mean, I guess 2 things. The top 2 councils there, so Croydon and Waltham Forest, they've got very different publishing models. So your model is devolved, David. Croydon's is not at all. So they have a central team that runs everything. But it was, you know, when this working group came together, I was really keen that at least the 2 edges of this were shown. There's probably more to do, but we understand the edges, so that's good. But also, you know, if you're fans of LocalGov Drupal, we're going to be doing a lot more of this, because it's a nice way to move through sort of design stages quickly and make decisions, you know, and then have show and tells like this, showing where the work has ended up. We'd like to do a lot more, and if anyone's got any comments about that, or if you want to run a working group, if there's something you really want to build that maybe isn't on our roadmap at this point, then do give us a shout and we'll help you get started and find other councils that might be interested, because we know the roadmaps for most councils at this point. So we can find councils on the same journey as you. That's all I wanted to say, really. Thanks, David.
Cool. I don't know, does anybody else from the working group or Agile Collective want to chip in a little bit on that? I'm putting people on the spot without telling them.
I could say we learned a lot really quickly. Working through the different stages of this was quite challenging, but really rewarding. So we tried to document it as much as possible. And I personally learned a lot, and it was nice to work with everyone. So that would be the main thing, I think.
Cool. Thanks, Oliver.
I'll just say a brief bit then. Just as mentioned, there is work in flight for some other bits. The review dates, for example. Ryan also just mentioned in the chat, you know, is it required? Is it possible to have a mandatory comment on the sort of updates? And so I linked through to an issue there, which that's also a requirement from Tom and Croydon, that you know, the potential to enforce the what's it called, the revision log, to enforce like content editors or whoever's making the change to write down what the changes are made or why it's been bounced back. So that's definitely a requirement, which we think will probably be an optional requirement. So like a site-wide, you know, either enforce this or don't. So again, there's an example where as long as there's at least 2 councils who want the same thing, then let's try and build it and include it in the distribution.
Cool, nice one. Yeah, I think Will and I just spoke about that as well from Waltham Forest. That's kind of one of our requirements too. So yeah, that's good. So just in terms of the technical bit, so this is kind of copied just from the GitHub LocalGov workflows page, but it gives a brief intro into it. So the default editorial workflow for LocalGov Drupal content, the different states that is defined for each of those roles is in there as well. And then, like I mentioned, for the content scheduling, it's using the module Drupal schedule transitions. And then there's 2 modules for the content preview, which is preview link and responsive preview as well. I don't know, Finn or anybody else, if is there anything else more to add from the technical side? I speak somewhat as a product and technical, well, product, but technical Luddite position myself, I think.
I think we know that there definitely we need to do more documentation and probably some screencasts. I mean, obviously this show and tell will form a great resource for other people to bring them up to speed. But yes, you know, local workflow is potentially a complex beast. As Will mentioned, this is like a default set of workflows, and a default, you know, out of the box, you get some stuff configured in a way which we think is going to work for at least a few councils, but isn't necessarily set in stone. So, so you know, documentation and screencasts to add to that, to show people how to change it, to yeah, you know, sort of help people get up to speed as they need is on the in the pipeline at the moment.
Cool. Thanks, Finn. So just in terms of how to start using it, I think we'll kind of talk to this already, but so like a couple of people have said, it's kind of suggested default. You can choose to use it or not, and you could also use it as a foundation to build on top of as well. And then that link there just links to the GitHub page that covers LocalGov Drupal workflows. And then to get involved with this work further, this work stream, like we said, there's still a few little bits and there's definite improvements that we've kind of, we all know are somewhat in the pipelines, but these can be influenced further. So we are holding fortnightly working group, so Wednesdays 11 a.m. And we do have a Slack channel dedicated. Each working group has a Slack channel dedicated to it. So if this interests you, you can join as a member. It's called Product Content Lifecycle. And then a lot of the thinking, the kind of brain farts, but more detailed working out of things is on the Miro board as well. In the section, there's a section that has content lifecycle updates as well. So I think that's the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions on that, or is it better that I dive into the kind of show and tell first? Does anybody have any preference or questions at this point?
Maria did also comment there in the chat that Oliver wrote a great blog post about the experience of participating in the working group. So that's on Medium. There's a link there in the chat. Do read that, because that's a good read. Less specifically about workflow, but the case study of getting involved in the working group.
Cool. Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be questions or thoughts or reactions when we actually get into it, because it's the meat of it. It's always best to show the thing, isn't it? So this is the test LocalGov Drupal site, and I'm logged in. This is kind of the homepage, which obviously doesn't mean too much, but you can see there's this people's tag. So within people, you can see, well, the three main users that we've talked about here. So we've got the contributor, the author, and the editor. And within the LocalGov Drupal site, the test site, you can basically masquerade as one of those. So I'm just going to masquerade as the contributor. So this is kind of the lowest level. You'll see that the links have disappeared, and then I've got this content tab. So if I can just do, so you can see that that's me creating the draft of a page within LocalGov Drupal. And then on my save as options, I've got two things here. So if I'm going to continue working on this, got more to add, that kind of thing, I can just save the page as a draft. Or if I'm ready to send it to review, I can just go save and send that page to review. And then that isn't live, but it will go through to the editor to be able to access that. So that's kind of from a contributor. Right, now if I unmasquerade and go back to my people tab, and then I go to my author role to masquerade as. So in this one, again, your kind of admin-y stuff and those kind of things is locked down, and I've got my content tab. So I'm going to add a service page, and I'm going to call this show and tell author page. And you'll see here that I've now got the 4 different publishing states. So same thing, if I want to carry on with it, I'll just save it as a draft. If I'm happy with it and kind of it's not controversial, it's already been signed off the content, I can go straight to published. Or if you have a model that's kind of like content designers peer reviewing, you could do this kind of thing where you then send it for review as well. So that's kind of, let's send it straight to published, and we'll see that page is now live. So that's kind of the main sort of the contributor and the author ones. What if we go up to the people? So now we move to the highest level one, which is the editor. So again, you can kind of see I've got things here. I've got media and scheduled transitions added, but I can add content here and go service page. And then same thing here, I've got all the different options. So I can continue, and I can put, like, I can get that peer reviewed as well. So I can put that to review. That means someone will be able to look at that. So that's kind of the editor. Now, as the editor role as well, I have access to an approvals dashboard. So this is the kind of bit of functionality that we alluded to before. And it basically shows all content that's in the moderation state review. I can go back and then edit that page that's just been sent. And then I can do things. So I could send it back to draft. That's effectively rejecting the draft. Or if I'm happy with it, I can go and I can publish it and go from there. So that's pretty much how the dashboard works. And now that's published, that will be dropped off the dashboard in that instance. So that's how the dashboard works. And that's kind of a flavor of how the roles and the workflow also work as well. If we move on to scheduling now, so somewhat of a Blue Peter moment, I've kind of put some pages that are here before. So for example, what have we got? We've got a test page that we could schedule to go live. So you'll see that this page is unpublished at the moment. So I could go into this content. I could either edit it and then go into a tab that says schedule transitions, or I can just hit this button and go schedule transitions. Oh, sorry. Let me put this onto, so what's that? New service page. Test page scheduled to go live, and go schedule transition. And then what I've got here is taken me to the tab anyway. And then I go add schedule transition. And then I can basically say, I want this one to go live, and then hit schedule transition. And then I say, I want it to go to publish. And then I can select a date in the future. And then put it for 12 noon and then schedule it. And then that page is basically scheduled, and you've got the date in there, and it shows within the tab of the page. So that's scheduling a page to go live. If I wanted to do the same thing where I want to schedule test page for a scheduled and publish, so I can see this page is published already. I can do the same thing, schedule transition, add a schedule transition, select the revision, that's the published one, and then I can go either archive, well, archive in probably this instance, that would be unpublish, and then the same kind of thing. So I can select that for a date in the future. And then that's scheduled. And then if I wanted to now schedule a new draft of a current page that's already published, the same kind of thing. So a live page with a new draft to be scheduled. So again, schedule transitions. Add schedule transition. And then I could say I want it to be published here. So schedule that, publish, again for the date. And then that's scheduled too. And then the final one is a page to be reverted to a previous revision. So in this one, we can go scheduled transitions, and it shows me all the previous revisions. So this is the current one that was published at 12:38. And if I wanted to move to a previous revision, I could just go publish, because it's going to a previous revision, the date as well, and then the times. And there we go. So that's kind of so that's 4 different variations that have got schedule revisions in. And then also, as an editor, you have this view that shows kind of, there already was one that was scheduled in there, but you have this overall view. So for example, if you have something where a member of the royal family passes away, like recently happened this year, and you've got some marketing campaign that's scheduled to go live that would be inappropriate, you have this kind of view here where you can go, and I could cancel it, delete it, and do what you will with it. So that is pretty much the bits that have built so far. As Finn said, the review dates and the quality assurance is to come, and has been worked on as we speak. So that's pretty much it.
I think there's also, that's brilliant, David, thank you. I think there's also scheduling of alert banners, which isn't quite there because they're not sort of content entities in the same way, but there's definitely discussions around that, adding alert banners, removing alert banners as needed. So I think that's is that coming? Certainly a conversation about it.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about it. Yeah, and I think it's definitely a requirement from us, and I think the people within the working group it was as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody have any questions, initial thoughts or anything?
This is Ryan from Hammersmith. I think I was probably the protagonist for this session, so I'm really glad we've had it, because I love I love the whole thing. Everything that you've shown here today, I think we'll definitely either use it as it is or be building on top of it, especially the transition stuff you've just shown. And I think we definitely will be interested in the review stuff, because I don't think we do enough of that. And it is something that along with other web governance stuff, the quality assurance and all of that is something we want to improve upon. Just touching on the schedule stuff, you said that, I think Will just said there'd be something separate for alerts, but can the schedule stuff that you've just shown us, can that be extended to other content types, I guess, or paragraphs? I guess the way it works now, is it just to pages themselves? It's not like to individual blocks or views or stuff like that?
I think my understanding is that is how it would work. So for the site alerts, for example, you could use scheduled transitions for. I don't know, Finn, if you know specific blocks and things like that, or whether that's something we need to explore.
Maybe Finn's not here anymore.
Oh, is Finn? I think Finn has dropped off. Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, Maria, carry on.
If I think it is pages, but I can't. Can you give me an example of?
I was just thinking. I mean,
when something wouldn't exist on a page, because you could schedule a transition for that particular component to appear on a particular date. So that would work, but it is still I think it is still the page that's being scheduled. The reason why the alert banners is different is because it's as David said, it's a different sort of entity. Or what have you?
I guess I'm thinking, because of how our current Drupal 7 site is set up, as opposed to how things will work on Drupal 9. But and Nigel can chip in if I get this messed up, but we have, there are times where we introduce, I I think they're blocks. Are they blocks, Nigel? On an ad hoc basis to the page. I think it is blocks. And we do that using Panelizer, as opposed to like adding a component in the editor screen. So I was just wondering, yeah, as I said, I'm thinking more of my D7 hat on rather than how things may work in the future. I guess it's from that type of scenario. Yeah, could you
I
schedule
suspect
or something?
what we're using to do the alert banners could be extended for any other kind of custom entities. And yeah, that would probably be some custom work to extend that. But it should be, you know, reasonably simple. But obviously, until what those sort of custom blocks are part of the LocalGov Drupal, I think we can't hook into it. But it should be possible to extend it.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan, I know, Nigel here, hello everyone. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about on the D7 site, and we do have a very heavily customized panelizer, so it may not be relevant as we move to D9 LGD, but we need to explore that, Ryan, and bear it in mind ourselves. While I'm on, can I just say, David, I love the simplicity of that. I love the functionality, really, really good. Agree with what Ryan says. I could see us pretty much using it just out the box as you've described. Very, very good, very impressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Does anybody else have any questions, thoughts?
David, you mentioned that we might be to ask people for if there's anything on their wish list that we've not talked about yet as a sort of future work.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's just a couple more things from Waltham Forest side that we're really interested in. So, for example, to be able to see the difference between drafts or revisions would be something that would be really, really nice. And then the one that was already mentioned about the making it compulsory and having a kind of thread of comments for revisions for us. But yeah, I wonder from elsewhere in LocalGov Drupal if there's kind of what those wishes would be on top of this.
You've covered the one that was top of my mind, just comparing revisions, and you say that's on the list already. Very useful functionality. I can't think of anything else right now, but I'll keep thinking.
Okay.
Well, from my perspective, I guess on the theme of quality assurance, would something along the lines of, you know, the functionality that something like Siteimprove or Silktide provide in terms of checking where people, I guess, yeah, don't write to your standards. I think there are modules for that within Drupal. I guess around like accessibility checks as well. Would that come under this piece of work, or would you consider that to be separate and building that into well, actually, no, I'm just answering my own question. Building that into the workflow, I guess, if it's possible. Say, for example, they've created a page and let's say they've used the wrong heading levels, but they can't submit it for review or to be published until they fixed it right there and then.
So I won't answer that from a technical point of view, but from our side, we kind of thought of that as a digital transformation piece in a way, where it's kind of, we would go back to the editor, we'd respond to them and say, oh, we don't use dashes here, or you haven't met so it would be a way of kind of upskilling and educating those kind of devolved contributors from that side. But like you say, there probably could be a technical side to that as well, which I'll leave to someone more technical to me to maybe come up with.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the two that Finn's put in the chat, those are the two I've looked at. So just wondering, yes, with whether I'm not sure we'd need both, but if either one of those modules could fit into the workflow as well.
I think Maria's done some testing on those modules, so I might be able to speak to those modules, but I think it is the separate thing from the workflow. I think it's more about content designer assistance, admin UX, I guess, rather, because we're talking about humans checking each other's work really at the moment and having different permissions.
Yeah.
And I guess these things kind of help the content editor. I don't think they would actually necessarily block you from saving, but I'm not sure. Maria, have you anything to add on that?
Probably. I mean, you could probably. I mean, it would definitely be custom work, but the CK editor accessibility checker, you could probably get to. You wouldn't be able to save it until at least you'd run it, because at the moment it's like an optional, like a spell check button that you can run on your CK editor. The other one actually sort of parses the front end, and yeah, it's definitely more of a tool to help your content editor. Once you've saved it, then you can review it and see. So but yeah, they're specifically, like, there's some accessibility rules that they'll check, but I mean, it's definitely interesting. Like the rules for your in-house styles, and like you say, trying to follow them. Fascinating. That's what I'm going to say.
Personally, I would try and err away from, enforcing the inability to save a document based on some kind of automatic checker, because there's going to be cases where it gets it wrong, and I do see that as a tool to assist content designers, I think, and try and help people learn to write better content, and rather than a sort of a blocker to changing state. But each team could have their own solution where that's concerned, I guess.
I guess two things that we're wanting to start a content designers group. There's always already been a lot of interest in this from some content designers that are close to the project, but the ability for them to catch up from time to time and say, this tool would really help us, or here's a gap, or something like that. So if you've got content designers that would in your teams that would like to join, we'd love to get that started, because I think it will just give a lot of power to this. And I think the second thing I would say is, and this might be custom work as well, but in the Gov UK publisher at one time, it actually helped content designers by saying, as you're adding a page to a new section, it will tell you about the user needs in that section. In the admin site, it would say this is what it's for, and this is how similar pages have performed, and these are sort of things that you could do or not do. That maybe makes it sound more sophisticated than it was, but it was useful. And that might be an area that content designers want to look at. It's sort of, here's some guidance when you're doing this thing. Maybe helping rather than stopping. It'd
be great to know if I knew the user persona I was writing to when I'm designing the content. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think there was at one point nothing made it to Gov UK without a user need. You couldn't make a page unless you specify what this thing is. Who's the user, and what are they trying to do on this page? And if you've got that, then you've got something that's forever. Where you come back to it, you can see why it was created and so on. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily advocate that right now. We need to have a good think about it, but it might be something that could be talked about by content designers, see if it would help. So yeah.
Cool. I think we've got 5 minutes scheduled, but I don't know if anybody has any more, or yeah, I'll definitely share the link to the presentation is within the LocalGov Drupal like Google Drive. So, and also this recording as well we'll kind of send around, I imagine. Does anybody have any further thoughts, or should we wrap things up?
There was something about groups, wasn't there? We talked about, you and I talked about it, David. I mean, it's not a need for Croydon or Cumbria, I don't think. So when a page needs to be reviewed, a group knows, the parking group or the whatever group. We talked about that in Brighton briefly. So that that's good territory to explore if anyone's interested. Yeah. Sounds like a plan, says Finn.
Michael just said that we'd like to stick it on YouTube and point to it from the first LocalGov Drupal internal newsletter, which will be coming to your inboxes shortly.
Excellent. Next
Lovely.
week.
Next week. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Not too shortly.
Long overdue, but it will be here soon. Yes. Should we wrap up, David?
Yeah, I reckon so. That sounds a good point to end with that on its way to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for coming. If you've got any questions, any thoughts, you can really reach out to any of us, to David, Finn, me, Maria. We're kind of in the beta team, or join the Slack channel as David said, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Will. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, David.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.